Senator, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for your years of hard work for families and for children. It has not gone unnoticed. You're a hero in many, many parts. And certainly for the ERA Coalition, you're a hero this year for signing on to co-sponsor the time limit removal bill on the ERA. What motivates you? Why this amendment that we've for so long have been working on? What is that? What does it mean to you?
Well, Carol, first of all, thank you very much for your leadership. That leadership has probably never been more important because, as you know, as you can just following national policy, this can be a year of real change. And I hope it can be a year when we finally make the kind of significant progress we need to make on the Equal Rights Amendment that we have not made in recent years. So I'm motivated, I think, for the same reasons that so many Americans are, that it is so long overdue, that women are recognized as having equal rights in a manner that is consistent with American values. And I have the blessing of not only to be a public official, but also to be a father of 4 daughters and my wife as well, who advised me on a number of issues. And it's still hard to comprehend that we've gone all these years, even decades, with not nearly enough progress. So I think there's plenty of motivation. And now we just have to have a commitment on legislation in addition to motivation. I've had a record of making sure that when I propose legislation, when I co-sponsor legislation, or when I support a policy, that I'm representing the state that I am sent from, in this case, Pennsylvania. And they sent me to the United States Senate to do a number of things, but especially to represent the basic interests of our state. And women in Pennsylvania have contributed so much to the strength of our state and to the strength of our nation. And to have not nearly enough progress made, I think, is a source of both frustration and I think motivation to get things done. There's a number of bills that I've been working on of late that have some relevance here in terms of making sure we're doing everything we can by way of other legislation as well. For example, we just recently got additional Republican support for a bill called the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. And it's hard to believe that we have to work so hard just to get another senator signed up, but we're getting good support on this bill. And what that bill does is simply say if you're pregnant in the workforce, you should be accorded reasonable accommodations, just like we do in the context of disability rights for the last 30 years. Family and medical leave is another issue. Obviously, year after year, we have debates about and good changes, we hope, depending on who's in power, to the Violence Against Women Act. I had a major piece of that a couple of years ago, going back more than a few years ago now, the Campus Save Act, to provide more protections for women on college campuses. So lots to do in addition to the overarching priority on the ERA.
Right, and so many of the things you mentioned would be helped by the Equal Rights Amendment. So the constitutional underpinning of all of those, the Pregnancy Protection Act, VAWA, many of them, and yet there seems to be some opposition still to the ERA. In your mind, what is guiding that? What's making that, come up more and more often when the Equal Rights Amendment is discussed?
Well, I think there's sometimes it's philosophical. Sometimes it could be purely political, that if it's a Democratic bill, the Republicans won't support it, that kind of opposition. The good news here is that even though it's not the kind of overall robust support that we're seeking, but there is some bipartisan support. As you might remember, in the last Congress, the political support broke down basically 46 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Obviously, that's not enough. We need more than that. But there is a I think there is a bridge to Republicans in their support in the last Congress that we can build on. But we have more work to do, and I think it's got to be a priority issue as we approach a series of big debates this year. But also, obviously, it has to be made a bigger issue, I think, during elections. And sometimes that's a challenge to keep it in front of the voters, keep the electorate informed about what's at stake. And I'm hoping that between now and the 2022 elections, we have congressional elections, legislative elections around Pennsylvania, that we can make this a more prominent issue.
Right. And we do have Senators Murkowski and Collins already signed on. Do you see, and I know you do, a lot of collaborative work with Republicans, the success of your Senate career. I mean, are you optimistic that more Republicans can be brought on?
I am, and a lot of that has to do with not necessarily what I or another senator will say to a colleague. Sometimes that has an impact. I like to think it does. But most of that is, I think, testament to what folks who are kind of laboring in the vineyards every day out there advocating and have been advocating in many cases for decades on this issue. It's really what they do when they bring this issue to the attention of people in their community and then ultimately to their elected representatives. That is the most powerful, the most persuasive, and the most effective way of getting that support. And the good news is not only on the ERA, but a few other issues, not as many as I would like. I think there are Republican senators that are feeling the ground moving beneath them, that they know that people want the ERA to finally be fully ratified, and that we have to make sure that we have the legislative vehicle to help us do that. So the demographics of our country and the great advocacy that so many people that you work with, I think, are starting to bear some fruit.
Well, we're glad to hear that. In your own mind, in terms of what if this miraculously we are able to get the time limit removed and the ERA moves into full inclusion in the Constitution, what does that mean? What do you see happening in the country?
Well, I think it would be a brand new chapter in American history. It would open up opportunities that are either foreclosed now to women or are compromised or undermined or degraded in some fashion. So it would be a new chapter in American history. And I think when we're at our best, we've always tried to widen the circle of people that have protection and opportunity to pursue whatever version of the American dream that they want to pursue. But when you constrain people and you put obstacles in their way, generation after generation, at some point you're going to have a breakthrough. And I think we could be entering that period now.
Terrific. And your advice to the people of America who want to see this happen? You've given us some instruction, but what directly are you saying to voters in particular?
Carol, I think I'll give them very profound advice. It'll be this: keep doing what you have been doing. Meaning that I think most people know that their engagement with their elected officials, still today, but even more, probably more traditionally, making phone calls, writing letters. But now we have obviously the tool, the platform of social media, which is often used to spread negative messages and unfortunately can have a lot of sharp edges. But social media is one way to aggregate a lot of opinions and a lot of momentum for change, and we've seen that play out most recently in a lot of different ways in a positive way. Sometimes we dwell on the negatives of social media, but there's no question you can organize and aggregate and move issues, I think, to a greater degree today than we could have 15 or 20 years ago. So really making your voice heard and making sure that Americans know that the ERA is a voting issue. It's an issue for men and women, and it's an issue we finally have to make good progress on.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator.
Carol, thank you.